Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the saasstrana application security podcast. Today, we have with us Kashi, founder and CTO at Fitbots. Fitbots is an OKR SaaS platform. Kashi, in this podcast, shares with us his approach for addressing security problems or issues proactively as part of their daily business. He talks about a habit that they have built, which he calls a daily security gym routine to get a snapshot of the security posture on a regular basis. He also talks about some of the unique things they have done for protecting the API endpoints and calls it dynamic endpoint protection. Welcome to the podcast, Kashi.
Hey, Venky. Nice to be here. Glad to be here.
Can you tell a little bit about yourself, Kashi?
Yeah. First, hello all. I'm Kashi, co-founder and CTO of Fitbots. Growing up, I never dreamed of being an entrepreneur. I dreamed of a totally different world. I'm so proud that I'm an entrepreneur today. By DNA, I'm a corporate guy, very organized, methodical, and focused and result-oriented. This really forms the DNA or the story of how we are building Fitbots today, where we are trying to bring in process and structure to organizations to help organizations make data-driven decisions with OKRs.
Okay. So Fitbot is focusing on, a little bit more about how Fitbot was founded. What is OKR? OKR is what I think I heard, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Objectives and key results. So a little bit about the story about Fitbot, what it does, and how it got founded.
Sure. It actually started off with a conversation with my co-founder, Vidya, on sketchy paper and coffee day. In fact, it was Starbucks. Going through the background of it, I was a corporate guy, mostly into data analytics and big data. I used to crunch a lot of data. Organizations used to spend millions of dollars to create dashboards and insights and analytical models to make data-driven decisions. But when I started correlating how these dashboards were really used to make decisions, the correlation wasn't right there because there are different parts of the organizations moving in different directions, and stitching to the decision was outside the dashboard. This really got me thinking, saying that what's the gap? Today, if you're a guy like me, you know the pain of spreadsheets, PowerPoints, or even BI reports. They help you track what has happened in the past. The predictions are quite of a mess as well, including the BI reports. This is where we got together and say, hey, can we put a structure to strategy execution? Can we have a system in place which not only brings together data from different places, but also the action orientation towards the data and track whether those data-driven decisions and actions are really making sense, aligning all the organization together. That's what we do. We call this objectives and key results, popularized by Google. After John Doerr wrote the book, Measure What Matters, it's becoming a phenomenon today.
Fantastic. I think you're corporate. I will not make I don't make the distinction between corporate and startups because every corporate at some point was a startup, and every startup as it grows becomes a corporate, right? So the founder tag is just nothing more than ended up becoming the first set of people to translate that napkin stage idea into something real. But after that, eventually it grows on to become a corporate. And the corporate experience and the corporate thinking is something that they evolved to anyway. In this case, OKR so beautifully resonates with what every corporates are struggling to do better on anyway.
Well said, Venky. That's so true, yeah. But sort of that being organized is something we bring from the corporate world down into the startup world sometimes. So it's quite interesting how we are putting it at scale.
So, I can both in corporates as well as a founder, objectives is something that we always try to make sure that once you define it very clearly, and the person who is executing on that or the teams that are executing on that are excited and inspired to achieve it, then the results take care of itself. But however, we always need to make sure that we are on the right track. right? Traction metrics. And at different stages, there are different metrics. And we had to make sure that we track them properly, not just in silos, but organizationally. So OKRs has become more important than ever before, not just to operate it in silos, but also, especially with this hybrid work environment, geographically disparate teams. So how is the adoption of Fitbot? I mean, it certainly seems like something that OKR is a space that every organization's talk to any CEO, any functional leader, they say, yeah, we should do measure, we should do better. So what has been the adoption and your story in terms of growth and scale and customer adoption?
I would use the one word, stellar. Very proud to say that. I'm really amazed by the way how
what is the one word you said?
As a stellar, outstanding, yeah. Stellar. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
But I'm really amazed by how OKRs find a place in the hybrid world, especially after COVID-19. The concept brings together a very important inflection point in the way the workplaces are changing, wherein you don't need to manage by task, but you need to manage by outcome. Especially when you start talking to the Gen Zs, they don't like micromanagement. They don't like to be given a task. They say, hey, I want to achieve this, and you go figure out how to achieve it. That's become the most important aspect of how you manage Gen Zs. Even the people who are in Gen X or older are probably already in the senior roles. They are definitely owning the outcomes. Now, while this used to happen before, but when you're looking at a hybrid workforce working from different places, you require some sort of software system to put this all together. I would say what was Jira to Agile is OKRs to Fitbots. So we are very proud to say that we aspire to be the Jira of OKR world. Yeah.
Okay. But is it fair to say that OKR, at the end of the Jira, even though what Jira is to Agile, Jira is also used as a performance management tool for development outcomes and everything, right? But organizationally, does OKR, there are market automation tools for marketing metrics. There are sales CRM tools for sales pipeline and closures and retentions and all those things. Then you have Jira that you mentioned. Does OKR stitches together all these different pieces and put together as an organizational dashboard? Is that what it is, or it's yet another standalone tool?
I think you brought about a very important point, Venky, saying that how do you get different parts of the organization to align together, and even units within the same division of the organization to align together. We'll take an example, right? You talked about marketing automation. When you go talk to a marketer, they may be tracking metrics. What is the click-through rate? Or what may be, I've written X number of blogs, done X number of Zoom webinars. They're all talking about which are nothing but actions or units of work. But really what you're looking at is nothing but, hey, are these MQLs that are coming in translating to revenue and growth as a metric? Are the activities really aligned? Are your webinars really yielding the audience? Should you even look at a different channel to drive MQLs? Now, there are multiple ways today. Today, product-led growth is a team. How can product contribute to marketing? So if you really look at it, the need to bring multiple parts of the organization together to influence the right metric, not as a post-facto scenario, but as a pre-facto scenario. I'd say in two simple words, KPIs are more like they represent the health metrics of the organization. They tell you whether how you performed in the past. Let's say if you take a measurement of your lead for, let's say, blood sugar, which is H count, says, hey, how has your blood sugar been trending based on what you're eating? Okay, as are probably the metrics that you set for things that you've never measured before. Hey, my goal is to reduce the weight from X to Y, reduce the blood sugar from X to Y. It's a path. Once you define that objective, you start measuring success with what we call as key results, and you line in all your actions and metric to see whether you're on track. And it helps you really think what are those critical actions that you're taking, that you're willing to try, experiment, and if it does not work out for you, re-strategize. Venky, you have seen this a lot today in the corporate world, that we form strategies, probably year long or even multi-year long. but the strategies don't even have a lifespan of a couple of months to a year. People forget what the strategy was, and it's changing so fast, and more aptly so. So if you measure, you're being a long timer in the industry. If you put take two axes, right, the pace of innovation versus time to market. If you draw a graph, if you see the pace of innovation is continuously increasing, and the demand of time to market for your product is continuously decreasing. You don't have the luxury of time anymore. And that's where you need to measure new things, align people together to drive efficiencies. And that's where OKR comes in. Of course, KPIs are nothing but a service to OKRs. They dance together. They are not one away from one another.
Fantastic. I think the keyword there is alignment. Even though you need depth and excellence and key performance indicator is going to be a key aspect, but making sure that each one of it is aligned towards the overall strategy and goals is what OKR as a concept and Fitbot as a problem statement is trying to solve better. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, well said, Venky. You put it together in a very beautiful way. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think my previous question where I talked about different tools was a segue to my next question, and it's closer to my heart, where I'm a technologist by profession and by qualification, even though I'm a sales guy and a businessman by what I do as a founder and entrepreneur. But my passion and my heart core of it is technology, right? So the previous question where I talked about tools and different tools and stitching them together. So I wanted to understand a little bit more in the OKR landscape or in the OKR problem that we are solving. How does the technology landscape look like? Are there lots of code and your own IP, or is it just stitching together different pieces of tools that are already doing their performance management and just doing the aggregation and integrate? I just want to get your view on what does the OKR technology landscape in general looks like in terms of, and specific to Fitbot, hosting, APIs, how much of it is API driven, consumption of APIs, or you consuming other people's API, or you giving your APIs that other people can consume and integrate with their systems. So some sort of a high level view of your technology landscape.
Sure. I think you brought together most important question in this era of bringing together multiple products and technology to actually drive your organization performance. I'll start with us, and then we'll talk about what does the OKR technology landscape really look like. We are a GCP shop, and since our product is hosted on GCP, we heavily use serverless paradigms such as app engines, cloud endpoints, Firebase. The data stack is on BigQuery, and the entire gamut of things that comes with GCP as a landscape. Irrespective of the landscape that we are in, I would like to talk about what we are doing in terms of bringing together data from multiple sources. You brought about an important point. Nobody likes to keep data in silos. If you're working in an enterprise, most of these enterprises have systems of record which are far away from systems of decision, and they don't really come together. So we have built our own API management layer, a sort of a proxy per se to be able to manage that. Along with that, we probably integrate with more than 160 plus third-party providers, right, to be able to fetch data from multiple systems in order to make data-driven decisions. So it's a mix of both. We don't aim to replicate data, but we aim to get data from multiple places so that the decision maker, when they are looking at it, are able to see if they are heading in the right direction. What sets Fitbots apart is not that we're bringing the data together, is how we bring the data together, align it to actions, and start predicting whether or not teams are aligned in the right direction. So if you work in a large company or in a small company, you'd often find that two teams are working on two different things, and the metrics start to bubble up and integrate, show up saying that, you know what, some team may be doing extremely well, but they're not really aligned to the North Star goal, which probably sometimes is the growth. Sometimes it's not growth. Sometimes it's profitability. Sometimes it could be anything else. So technology plays a major role to say whether those efforts are coming together in the right directions, whether those decisions are really making sense in the direction that you want to view and direct your organization forward. So API is a big part of our tech stack, and integrations is a big part of tech stacks. I think you're a lot of expert on this. Any thoughts on how you see the API landscape evolving, Venky, in your mind?
I mean, I honestly feel the future is API driven, trying to build everything from scratch. Even though as techies, we like to build things and do things, everything ourselves because it excites us. But from a commercialization standpoint and a time to market standpoint, it's important to embrace, adopt, and accept the API economy and understand what is core to us. The intelligence layer that you talk about in terms of providing context across different data seems like core to you. But anything else outside of it, reuse it, somebody else, somewhere else, more qualified than us would have solved that problem and reuse it as part of the tech stack. So I think API economy is going to be one of the biggest force multiplier of that bridging that gap you mentioned before, like time to innovation, making it shorter, and time to market, making it shorter. And probably unless and until people embrace it with open arms and culturally adopt it, and especially engineers focus on their innovation on their core, that gap that we talked about just before will not be addressed properly because time to market can be.
Yeah. I think Gartner and all the great industry bodies have put a beautiful term together for us to calling it the composable enterprise. Earlier, people say build it on your own. Now, hey, I don't want to build it on my own. I'll just compose my enterprise by bringing multiple API services from multiple places. Tech stack, not just API, even platforms from multiple places, and compose my enterprise and weave it together in a data mesh. I think that's a way of the future we strongly believe, and that's where we are headed towards.
Yeah. And in fact, because we are the heartbeat of a lot of internet traffic, I mean, not the whole internet as a whole, but at least for our customers, because we being a security gateway, I can tell that that what we are seeing is humans to application communication is now going to become a smaller and smaller component of the overall internet traffic. Application to application. People talk about IoT devices, device to application, but app to app communication. OKR app here talking to a Jira app there, or a market automation app and fetching those data. So application to application communication over the internet is going to be the biggest contributor of the overall internet traffic, followed by maybe device to internet, device to app, followed by humans to app. That's my view. App to app communication is just going to explode.
That's so well said, Venky, and I just love what you said. And I'm sure Indusface is heavily invested into that, and that's precisely what we are doing as well. From a not like from a cloud API gateway perspective, but more from a product and data interactions perspective.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I'm saying this because I'm living and breathing because and we are investing a lot on application security, and within application security, API security is a big thing for us. And it's the biggest challenge in the industry, but paradoxically, it's an easy thing to solve because APIs are well-defined sets of boundaries with very defined set of input and output parameters. So trying to put a security policy around what is good traffic and bad traffic is relatively easy versus a human to website interaction where the boundaries are not that because humans being random, how we click and the speed at which we click and the sequence in which we do things can be different every time we go, right? So it brings me to the next part of the question, given the and closer to my heart and what we do at Indusface. You deal with a lot of sensitive data, and you mentioned that you are integrating. So what is it you do about protecting data from a security standpoint, data security standpoint? What is it you guys do?
Yeah,
data.
Sure. Data protection is our primary focus. Of course, we apply principles of defense in depth and layer cake strategy. We start with stating the policies and procedures, isolating the physical layer and virtual assets. Having said that, we go into network security with VPN and firewalls and procedures to be able to protect that. There's data encryption in REST, in motion, and we do a lot of more things there. Coming to API-specific security, I think Of course, we use Cloudflare, but and our own intermediary layer to actually protect the data between multiple applications that we interact with. In fact, we have sort of built our own proxy API gateway, which I was mentioning, for applications to interact, because the paradigm of that traffic is far different than human to application traffic by design. Of course, the challenge that we face is that sometimes we as an organization trade off performance to security, which is something that our users who actually use a system come back and say, you know what, hey, there's a lack in performance at times. We'll say, hey, you know what, you want security or in performance for this data? We are ready to switch it off for you. And they come back and say, you know what, no, I would rather trade off security to performance. So I think that's a delicate walk that we all have to talk about when applications talk to each other, and encrypting the data and ensuring that the traffic between apps is secure, and there are adequate policies and procedures to help our customers make those right decisions in terms of choosing which of the data is secure or insecure, and we let our customers take control of that, and we being able to decide every single point in time for such exchanges.
Yeah, interesting. And I think, do you also, as part of your the partners you integrate with, or the services you consume, do you, as part of your checklist, ask them to check with them what security measures they have in place for that service, or you just take care of, this is what I do?
I think we have done something quite fundamental, which is something some of them don't like. We avoid API key-based integrations by a lot. We switch back to 2.0 or token-based integrations by large. So we strictly follow that. But having said that, when it comes to API-based integrations, we have come up with a technology called dynamic endpoints. You'll not find that in the industry today. Today, everybody, if you know an endpoint, then what happens is that you're likely to hit an endpoint and the hacker has an exposure to the endpoint. Imagine that the endpoint is continuously changing and the payload associated is changing. It makes it quite difficult for an intercept to happen, and that's very important for an app-to-app communication to happen. And then we allow the customer to sort of configure rules to the dynamic endpoint itself. So that's the USP in terms of security we bring to the table. Having worked in the industry, I have not seen anything similar. I would call it an IP of ours, but I have not seen anything similar by far in any tool that's ever designed.
I have heard stories about many people talking about how they got hit by ransomware because the authentication key was lying in the public network, and that was picked up by a hacker, and then all sorts of things were done and they held ransom. So seems like you have created some barrier to that common. I mean, it's not really a security lapse in the organization, but just a little bit of and a human mistake. Sometimes these biggest problem happens due to human mistake. And you have created your own defense mechanism with what you call dynamic endpoints to minimize that problem. Seems like, have you been hit by any stories to tell about? Have you been hit by ransomware or hack attacks or any experiences? Or you have been lucky and you're praying God still?
I don't think you can pray to God in today's world. Pray
God, but still lock your door. That's the whole cliche.
Yeah. I think by far, attacks are quite common, irrespective of the businesses that you work with. It's not about the attack. We have to talk about what response or defense mechanism that we have put in place, and everybody around the industry are putting in place to do that. And probably tools like Indusface, Cloudflare, a lot of the technologies are helping startups and probably applications to do that. So maybe I'll just talk about a new trend that I'm seeing. I'm sure you are seeing that as well in terms of what's happening in terms of attacks that are happening. social engineering attacks are on the rise. I think that's where the most vulnerability we are finding in happening across the industry. Actually, I want to tell not our story, but a news story that you would be really surprised to know of how hackers have changed the dimension or the vector of the attack itself. So what they did, I would not name the founder, but what happened to this person is he was running a webinar just like what we're doing, and the hacker found a vulnerability, and instead of targeting the company, they targeted the family members, saying that, hey, your so-and-so is going live, the wife of the software engineer, and then so if you don't give this to me, I'll leak it and do a damage to your husband's go live webinar. And people fall for that. And so I think the vectors, initially they used to only target companies. Now they are targeting close friends, families, and so on and so forth, which I find very shocking and surprising as well. I think the need for quick money is increasing for them, and they do it even for small amounts, which would be sort of surprised.
Yeah. I mean, for them, it's economies of scale as well, right? Yeah. But I think, and fundamentally, humans end up becoming the most vulnerable point. And you as a business owner, the only thing we can do is make sure our applications, the things that we own, doesn't end up becoming the segue for attacking and creating. So I think they still have to masquerade as you or somebody else and try to win the trust. But imagine if they're able to do it through an email ID or through an application vulnerability that is exploited to gain that trust. That's where you try to make sure that your application is secured, but you still have to educate the humans and everybody, saying that, if it is not coming from me and these things, like classic example is bank, cybersquatting. Like ICICI Bank, I'm just picking ICICI Bank as an example, not that there was an incident there, but ICICI Bank as an example, instead of I put one and I looks very similar, and and send out an email .de or SA or something, some other domain which is owned by me, and send out a daemon pretending to be ICICI Bank. You still have to do that. But the change here is ICICI Bank itself is not vulnerable. They can only control whatever cyber squatting that happens, they do not control. And you'll have to educate the users to say that pay attention to who is sending it, where it is coming from, and don't fall for those phishing attacks, right? So good story, but those kind of stories cannot be, there is no prevention to those kind of hacks other than educating the users to, the only prevention is, at least from your application standpoint, you can keep it protected and make sure it doesn't become the segue for the attacks. Good, thanks. Very interesting. And there is no dearth of stories. In fact, you mentioned you'll be surprised, Venky. In fact, I was the least bit surprised. I mean, I have heard so much of these stories that it's tough for me to be surprised with any kind of new attack vectors. And to the hacker community or people who are doing it for wrong, it's no special talent. I mean, all they are doing is creating fraud and theft and petty theft. They had to be ashamed of themselves to be putting such things into you. I don't think it requires special talent to do such frauds. They can be put to better use. So
well said, Venky.
Yeah. That's good. I think I talked about you. What is it you do when you consume services from your customers or your partners and APIs? In your customers, you as a customer to some other API, there are certain things you mentioned, like dynamic endpoints is one thing you mentioned for your APIs. But when customers subscribe to your service, in their buyer journey, at what point of time does security is security even a sales conversation for you to sell to your customers?
I think we have to talk this by segment. I think that's how I would put this conversation. I'll talk about the highest one segment. If you're talking to enterprise as a customer, we work with a couple of enterprises. The first door to cross, even before they become a prospect, is the door of the CISO or the security team. You have to knock the door, and unless they give you the gate pass, you don't even enter to the party or the conversation. I think today security buyers well aware, irrespective of the department they come from, right? And it is even before they become your customer. We submit. We use a third-party assessment called CyberGRX, which is one of the top assessment reports. They did the assessment for us, and they submitted the report, and then we get into the door. Having said that, it's very important, especially serving mid-segment and enterprise. You are very aware of security, and you are invested enough and continue to invest on a day-to-day basis in security paradigms. When you come to the lower end of the segment, say mid and lower part of the enterprise, here we don't necessarily give them everything, but they more look for social validations. Are you ISO 27001 certified? Hey, which tool are you using to run your scans? And you or talk about 2 or 3 security tools, and you just send them your VAPT report, and they are like, okay, this is the best tool out there to be able to protect that, and they move forward. So I think there are 2 different segments, and they behave in 2 different ways. But irrespective of that, there's no single sale that we see above mid-segment and above which does not have a security deep dive conversation at all.
So you, in a nutshell, there is a risk of your deal getting stalled if you do not show the security reports, and it's a must-have.
It's a must-have, yeah.
In fact, in my business, that is what I find to be the biggest international growth driver for us. Other SaaS companies like yourself, trying to sell a very compelling value proposition to their customers, and they deal with data, critical data. In this case, OKR data is very critical. And for their customers to place their trust on them, they are asking them, what is the security initiatives you have taken? And then they show the Indusface reports in terms of, yes, we have the Indusface web application firewall. All our tenants are protected through the Indusface web application firewall. And here's a report, or here's a security assessment. And I'm glad to see that you guys are doing that too. And as a application security practitioner, even though I would like all of them to use Indusface, the fact that they are using and so thinking about this use case, to me, feels the market is growing. And the fact that security is a must-have for any sales to happen.
I think I would want to talk a bit about Indusface and something unique you're doing, and we should talk more about it if I may say. I think when it comes to API security, I think the way it's evolving is not all APIs need to be secure. Similarly, you're going to have public-facing APIs. Then you're going to have app-to-app communication, right? Which is becoming more prominent. Today we're talking about app-to-app communication. Here you're talking about interfaces where you'll be interacting with engines such as ChatGPT or something else, some other AI engine wherein you share the data and you get some information back. Maybe your own different segment. So I think the rules and dynamics of the game are not something I think human can deal with anymore in time to come. So I don't think people are impersonating just humans anymore from a behavior. The impersonation of apps is emerging. Impersonation of bots is emerging. So I think that paradigm and the investment that Indusface is making with dynamic AI engine to be able to detect some of these advanced threats, which can sometimes result in loss of business, or even if not in dollar value, at least in terms of face value, I think I'm really proud you're invested in that. And I wanted to tell all of you are saying, hey, this is something very special about Indusface. And I was very happy learning that from you.
Thank you. I think, and I think we're not even scratched the surface. I think the problem statement in the market and the number of apps and APIs coming out is so much. And all of them need security. Anybody in solving any critical B2B problem needs security. So there is a lot of opportunity for growth. In fact, I personally would like to see more players coming out and doing a lot of things, better things. We we have picked an area where we combine risk assessment, risk protection, API security, management, all of it under one umbrella so that you, Kashi, can run your OKR business and leave the security to us because we take care of all of this. But there is more that can be done always. And that is where we spend a lot of our cycles on innovating, automating. But of course, don't lose track of the fact that finally the humans is going to play a critical part. You cannot just have an AI engine taking a block decision for you and risk false positives. But they can get it to do a lot of baseline things, and then the human provides a context on top of it to make it efficient.
Absolutely well said, Venky, and totally subscribe to that idea as well.
Great. I noticed that when I was doing the research on your website and we talked briefly, I mean, you have a lot of presence in Singapore, and Singapore seems to be your key, that region seems to be your key breeding ground of growth as well. Is that a fair statement?
We are global now. So we do have customers from all around the globe. Yeah, we are Singapore headquartered by design as a company. So that's true. I think when you're talking in terms of security and regional security, I think there are a couple of paradigms that are emerging. One is regional data protection laws that seem to be evolving in many ways. A lot of compliance models are evolving. And I think this is where I think a lot of security tools and assessments tools can come in handy. So for example, when I think we'll just go to the same segment that we are talking about, right? When you go and talk to a customer in a particular segment, they would say, hey, do you have this PDPA checklist, which is local to a Singapore region? Somebody would come back and say, you know what, I don't care whether you have this checklist. I want this particular checklist for California Privacy Protection Act, or it could be anything. I think this is where the tool base, of course, they're all very similar to each other and also diverse in terms of the way the report should be generated in order to address top 2 or 3 concerns that the buyer has in mind in order to navigate forward. So I think a lot of work, even by the tool vendors, is required to be able to support that. And I think we are learning more as we expand globally into this market and trying to get those certifications. Although you have the technology, you require the certification as a door in many places to actually.
And I think one of the when I look at the certification and standards, one of the most frustrating things is you mentioned California, Singapore, and different examples, right? Fundamentally, at the core level, they are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. But you still have to go through the effort of getting those certification and those compliances in place. It will be good if there is a motherhood compliance that maps all of them, that if you do this and you have already gone through this, you automatically get item A, B, C, D from this compliance, and you'd only have to do item D, which is unique in this compliance. It'll be great if we can have some sort of a mapping between different compliances and standards, which there are so many of them to choose from. Paradoxically, standards, but so many of them.
It does exist in terms of CIS and all that, but I think you need to repeat some of them, and I think that's where the business is always there for security companies, I guess.
Yeah. Good. So, honest answer, which I always expect from everybody, but a brutally honest answer. Let me qualify that. What percentage of your time as a CTO do you spend on security?
I think good question. It just depends on month to month, but I'll just probably talk about my day, right? You can ask any of my team member. We have something called Security Daily Gym, wherein we spend. Yeah. So we
not
have
patented, right? I like the term.
No, I don't know what it is called, but this is how we look at it. We are a small team, so we go look at. We have cybersecurity command center, which is provided by Google. So we use that just to take a look at, hey, where do we stand? And as we keep on developing and deploying these new services, you have to repeat this process again and again. So we do that. We spend about 5 to 10 minutes on that. And if there's something that's blinking red or orange, and we sort of take action, we have automated VAPT report that gets delivered to us every day morning, 9 a.m. And if that is okay or it's green, then we don't do anything on that day. But every couple of sprints, after every 2 sprints, we go back to the drawing board and check, hey, what did we develop and what is that we can sort of continuously improve to be able to protect our applications better. I think the challenge is that I think we may be too early, but I think the direction that we want to invest as a company is invest early into the zero trust journey, and which is all about continuous verification, limiting the blast radius overall, and automate some of the context collection in terms of behavioral data, be it endpoint, workloads, or even just protecting data at best. Because I think whether you're a startup, scale up, or an enterprise, that's a journey that is required by everyone today. So I think that's where we are. We are. I don't say are we fully zero trust. No, I think zero trust is a journey. I think people are still trying to figure out what it means, and I'm learning from you and likes of you to be able to go on the journey. So I'd say I have a varied answer, but if you ask me if in a week, do I have my full attention at least a couple of times in a week in terms of design, architecture, in terms of validating the report? The answer is definitely yes. And that's a promise that we have to ourselves stand to our customers, saying that, hey, what differentiates us not now, but in let's say 2 to 3 years from now, is that, hey, it's not that you just trust data with us, but you trust more than that, say that we are also helping you figure out where things could go wrong is something that we want to do in time to come.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, zero trust, I think it is just a new label to an old bottle. Which of course is a big buzzword right now, and of course it's an important aspect. But I would add my bit there, saying that the concept of zero trust, especially when you have publicly consumable services, where by design everything is on internet and your consumers, even if it is other B2B customers, somebody over the cloud is consuming it. So zero trust, certainly in terms of authentication, authorization, what they can, and allowing them in when they come knocking on the door, is going to be an important architectural part. But you'll also have to build design in depth, defense in depth, sorry. Where a perfectly legitimated, trusted user might be with a malicious intent, and they can exploit a vulnerability. A classic example is public-facing banking sites, right? A user is a public user who is going there, an authenticated banking user. And after authenticating themselves, they end up trying to do some fraud or exploit some vulnerability. And that is where vulnerabilities, defense in depth, data validation, protection, intent-based monitoring of their traffic and everything also comes in place. And I think you mentioned that you do those security web reports and assessment as well for your application, right? Which is good. Which is some.
Yeah, we have put some. I told you, right? I'm a corporate guy, so like some of this was very part of a very early design from day one, because we knew that if we were to sort of build an application, although we don't serve some of those segments today, but if we have to be in the minds of the users, I think this becomes a paradigm shift. Even if you're talking to a Series B or Series C scale up, they are selling to the enterprise, and they wouldn't want to talk to us if we don't have the stamp of security on a product. And I think that is probably the fundamental of every application that is going to come to the future, to the extent they can with the resources they have at their disposal.
Fantastic. You covered a lot of problems. I'm pretty sure that any new startup will learn a lot from some of the golden nuggets you have given. But I would want to give you any closing thoughts in terms of a new CTO from a new SaaS firm. Is there any pitfalls you want them to avoid? Any recommendation you want to provide? Any recommendation you want to provide them?
If we are talking to any new CTO, right? I would say, and you're just getting started into the role, I think that the most important thing is build your trust circle with people such as Joseph or any other security person who who's a guide in the journey. I don't think your primary application, you are solving a number of problems. Security is one of the problems you're solving. You're solving the problem of experience. You're solving the problem of product market fit. You're solving the problem of probably giving the best intelligent insight to the user, so on and so forth. I
Getting
think
the right resources, which always is
and having the right resources, hiring, like thousands of problems.
Yeah.
But in each of these fields, I think having a trusted go-to person, a trusted advisor to you, who's just a call away, who will help you navigate this journey is a very important circle. And they come in form of mentors, friends, so on and so forth. So you establish that. The second one I would say is that once you have established this, one is scaling the startup, other one is scaling yourself. Invest in programs which will, and there's a lot of out there, some for free, some for paid, which will help you define where you have to be in terms of your knowledge of the industry, in terms of security, and probably the pathway that the conversations that you need to have with your enterprise customers. They expect you to be knowledgeable on the topic, and not only knowledgeable, action oriented towards whatever you are trying to speak about. So I think that comes from scaling yourself to the role, being competent, and building a team around you to educate them so that they are competent enough to also, because they are going to be the people who are really going to execute. So invest in your team so that they are knowledgeable enough. It's not that one person in the organization knows about security, but importantly, the team knows, and teams constantly looks out on behalf of the organization every single day. I think these are probably my way of approaching it on day one.
I would add a third one, which you mentioned earlier, security daily gym.
Oh,
Start that as early before you get obese and gets out of control.
Yeah, well said, Venky.
So I think the security daily gym that you mentioned, it's a very nice hygiene that you mentioned. It was very refreshing to hear that you as a CTO want to minimize your time on that area because you have other things to do. But it gives you a very nice scorecard of where are we, red, green, orange. And then if it's red, you spring into action. If it is orange, you look at what can be done. If it is green, you have to make sure, is it green, and or is it because you're blindsided as green, or that's it. Those are three things, and move on. I think that hygiene is very, very important. And I would probably tell other CTOs to learn from Kashi and what he's implementing to start this process as early as possible. Maybe your corporate background helped you do that very early, but new CTOs, I think, probably should pick that up, in my view.
Thanks, Venky. And yeah, I think I would always say, more importantly, recruiter counsel. That's always the other go-to people who will help you out in this area.
Circle of trust is very, very important. I mean, it's anything, security. Fundamentally, that's what is going to help you evolve, learn, and grow, and everything, right? So having the trust circle is not just for security, even for anything in business, right? You need to have that genuine people who advise you for your well-being and mentorship and other things. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Kashi, CTO of Fitbots, OKR management software. Was a pleasure having you in the show, Kashi. There's a lot of golden nuggets, lot of points backed with a lot of experience that you have brought to the table. So really a pleasure hosting you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Venky. It's happy to be here. And those of you who have not tried out Indusface, I would like to talk about it a little more. Go try it out. If you're looking for API security with where each and API specific API has to be secured with multiple rules, especially from app to app communications, I think I would strongly recommend checking out Indusface. They are taking on vendors like Cloudflare and others, which is really a bro thing to do. I think all the best to you, Venky, and so happy to be on the show.
Now that you mentioned that, I will put a shameless plug to close it off. It's not just shameless. It's something that it's not a shameless plug. It's something that I am very proud about. I mean, we announced the Gartner Voice of Customer report. The PR went out today. We are the third time in a row, we are a customer choice with 100% customer recommendation. 100%, only vendor to have a 100% recommendation from all our customers. So something right that we are doing, and it starts with And it's all from our existing customers, right? 150 plus reviews, all of them willing to recommend us, highest product rating, highest support rating, and global customer choice in the Gartner Peer Insight. So certainly something that, since you mentioned it, Kashi, I won't call it a shameless plug. I would call it I'm proud about it. And I want to use this platform to also acknowledge my team for that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you have an amazing team. And to all the founders out there, Venky is a very genuine human being. If you're looking for somebody who you want to just bounce off thoughts on your security and your roadmap to building your product, just hit him up on LinkedIn, or otherwise he's in SaaS Boomi forums.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot for those nice words.